Welcome to Avira Digital's podcast series for redefining medical affairs and evidence management and AI. My name is Sanjeev. I'm the CEO for Avira Digital, the company specializing in life sciences, medical affairs, digitization, and AI analytics. Today, we have Dr. Sonal Bhatia, Senior Vice President and Head of Medical Affairs, Rare Diseases, Immunology, Inflammation, and the Hospital Business. Sonal is practicing physician, converted into medical affairs professional, and been 17 years working together at Pfizer. So Sonal, today we are going to have some interaction and some insight from you about Inflation Reduction Act, evidence management, how the digital and data and AI is probably impacting the world of life sciences. So with that, Sonal, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. As you stated, my name is Dr. Sonal Bhatia. I've been at Pfizer for 17 years, 19 years since I left clinical practice to pursue what is a bigger vision of mine to help patients, not just one-on-one as a practitioner usually would do and does, but to really help to broaden the toolkit that physicians have and to be part of the equation where we can take something that's in discovery all the way to the patient's hands in the shortest period of time possible. And my mission is simply to give physicians and patients that opportunity to try on new medicines that are going to help them with their conditions and symptoms and diseases.
Wow, fantastic. So I wanted to start this podcast with a very interesting topic of life sciences, which is life sciences industry is focusing on Inflation Reduction Act 2022. While we know that there are a lot of healthcare reforms happened in the past few years, but this particular IRA Act is very much thinking towards the life sciences companies, and they really need to think long and hard about their entire product and portfolio strategies. Can you tell a little bit about your perspective of IRA to drug development and how these pharma medical affairs are redefining their entire strategies, keeping evidence generations in mind? So I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, that is obviously a very interesting question. And I'm not going to answer that from the lens of pharma, but really from the lens of a physician. And when I look at what's happening, especially in life sciences with this act, I'm actually quite worried. I'm worried because drug development costs a lot of money. What happens behind the scenes when you take a molecule from discovery all the way to the point of its probability of getting approval through any of the global regulatory bodies, it's a lot of time and it is a lot of money. Many of those assets don't make it to that end finish line. And that's money that is lost and money that cannot be reinvested, right? But at the end of the day, those patients have lost when we cannot get a medicine to that finish line and into the hands of patients. What's going to happen in the future is that we're going to have limited resources, therefore limited discovery, therefore limited opportunity for maybe even the rarer conditions, which tend to be fewer patients, higher stakes. Yes, the cost is higher because the development costs so much more. The ability to innovate in technologies that are going to bring more advanced therapeutics is also going to be, I think, at a risk because many pharmaceutical companies will have to make very difficult choices and trade-offs. And those advances that require this innovation, I believe, are going to be at risk. Within the medical affairs arena, I suspect that what could happen is a limited funding for data generation. Now, data generation through medical affairs often leads to new indications in a medicine that may have multiple indications. Often you get that because you're looking at real-world evidence, you're seeing trends, and those trends make you realize that perhaps this medicine also has a benefit in another area with the same safety profile that you've already demonstrated. And then it's easy to go to the regulatory bodies and get approval for more indications, which means you're helping more patients with different types of diseases or symptoms. That also is going to be at risk. and the ability to fund research to develop new molecules or think of new insights and new indications, even for one molecule, is definitely going to be at risk. So I think we're at a crossroad where there's been a lot of science that's progressed. A lot of innovation has happened. Technologies are in high demand and are being developed at a very fast pace. But without the money to support all of that, we may be at risk of only supporting very basic needs for patients and not allowing innovation to grow as it should in this world that we are. We're in 2024. We need to be driving science at a very fast pace with innovation. Without it, we're not going to be helping patients of the future.
Perfect. Thank you. That leads to a very interesting question. As you correctly said, there is rapid development in a technology, but rapid development in the bioscience area. And this is coupled with exponential growth of data is growing, and it's impacting the entire landscape of not only medical affairs, but the entire life sciences landscape. And we also talked about IRA, where the companies need to come up with proactively thinking about their value narratives for their products, which are impacting by the IRA's policies or the pricing, risk sharing, a lot of things. So talked about exponential data, right? So specifically, can you elaborate how this surge of data is reshaping the integrated or overall evidence management per se within pharma?
Yes, I think there's been an explosion of data over the last decade and a half. When we used to talk about big data, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, we were talking about this. It was the term that everybody utilized. What's happened is we have a lot of data. We have a lot of access to data. But what we need to be is very proactive on what we're trying to solve with this data. For example, real world evidence. We collect so much evidence on how a medicine is actually working outside of a clinical trial in real life practice, with physicians prescribing it, patients experiencing it. That amount of data is so vast that you can get lost in it. And you can start to just do different analyses and not really focus on what the outcome is or what you're trying to solve for. So I always recommend that you need to start at the end. Understand what is the question that you're trying to answer, and then work backwards into the type of trial design that you want within that data set. This data is great. It's like a pool, and you need to know where you're going within the pool and what you're trying to get out of it. Once you know the question, you can work backwards, create the perfect design, and answer it. And with all of the clear biases that evidence has when it's not in a controlled study, you can still create a very good result and actually show directional data on whether the medicine continues to be as effective as you thought it was in the clinical trial or as you observed it in a controlled trial. Monitor the safety of the medicine, because that's very important. Even though a medicine's approved, we want it to continue to be safe for patients. So if there are any signals, data helps us provide those clues to start to understand how the medicine is performing in real world evidence. So it's such an important area, but one that you have to be very cautious of. Because if you go into the data and just run trials without understanding the differences in the control arm versus the treatment arm and really conduct the trial with integrity, you could come out with outcomes that are not true to the medicine, which could then impact your decisions and ultimately affect the patients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think evidence is at the center stage of these activities. And I know, Sonal, you've been involved in various launches throughout the career. How do you foresee with the last year's AI disruption coming in the market with big data analytics, how companies are taking a patient-centric approach with changing this landscape within medical affairs and its approach to launches?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because as you mentioned that, I went back to my first launch and thought about even Exubera, which was inhaled insulin, and how we managed that versus Eliquis. That was a huge launch. Fast forward to today, I think AI is disrupting absolutely everything. everything from the ability to get insights within seconds, right? As opposed to waiting weeks to months for insights to come through your field medical team and actually sitting down in a cross-functional team and assessing it and understanding it. I think I'm going to be telling my kids this and they'll be like, why did you do it that way? Because the new way is so different. You have insights at the tip of your fingers. AI is going to help you to actually see the trends in the insights. And that's going to open up potential new areas that you hadn't even considered as opportunities for patients. As you're launching medicines, we're going to be able to communicate our data to physicians in a very different way. Physicians no longer are interested in a one-on-one, 1 hour, 100-slide kit that you sit down and walk them through. I think nobody can handle that today. In the age of information, everyone wants bite sounds that are going to give them exactly what they want. And we're going to be able to generate the data in such a way that it'll be customized to different types of physicians. Some may want a lot more, some may want very little. We will know exactly who they are or what they need, and we'll be able to provide it through them just because we will have all those insights that AI can garner for us. And it will allow us to communicate to these physicians in a much better and more focused and targeted way so that we can have these dialogues with them and help them understand how to navigate their treatment journey or their diagnostic journey with their patients and be able to then make the right decision for the right patient with the right therapeutic option. But all of this sounds cumbersome. It's going to happen within minutes, not within months. And that is where we're headed with AI as it pertains to launches. Also, there's a lot of modalities for launching now. We're not having these big meetings and that becomes our launch meeting. I think launches are now going to happen in various different platforms. And there are so many different platforms available. And quite frankly, there's going to be a lot more in the future that we're yet to be exposed to. And all of those will take over the need to commute and drive and fly to just get access to the knowledge of a medicine so that physicians can start using it with their patients. And I think most importantly is the patients themselves. They are the biggest voice that exists today in pharma. I go back to earlier in my career when we actually didn't even talk to patients. And now when I reflect back, I'm like, why didn't we? Today, patients know exactly what's happening with them. We're learning from them. We have this continuous dialogue, which I think is going to become more seamless and more efficient with the utility of AI. They're also helping us understand how to design those clinical trials with them in mind and not just the regulatory body in mind. And by doing so, our trials are more efficient, our trials are more focused on the patients, and therefore have a higher success rate of actually getting approved. And not only approved, but actually being important for the patient. Because there's no point approving a medicine whose endpoint actually doesn't benefit the symptoms of the disease that you're intending to for the patients. We've all seen that happen in the past, right? So I think now the patient's voice and through the utility of AI and all the data that they provide sitting at the table is going to be so critical in navigating this whole patient journey as well as the drug development journey. They're going to be seamlessly one journey. And this one journey is going to be shortened, it's going to be sweeter, and it's going to generate a plethora of data for us that we're going to continuously utilize generative AI to help us understand it better and make the right decisions. So I think what I'm speaking about right now is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more for us to uncover in the next few years, and it's going to happen very rapidly.
Absolutely. And as you correctly highlighted in the earlier question, so various stakeholders and how entire pharma, medical affairs, clinical, whoever is interacting with these stakeholders, how they're going to get engaged. And Gen AI has a potential to revolutionize this entire space.
I totally agree.
I'm seeing there are some use cases coming up Any of your experience or anything where you see there is a compelling case studies or a story on AI, which you have seen a tangible improvement or demonstrated some kind of tangible benefits to the organization?
Yeah, I loved what you said about stakeholders becoming a part of one. In the past pharma life, everybody worked in silos. Everybody knew their goals. You're developing the drug, you're taking it through discovery all the way to commercialization. Medical comes in at a certain point and starts to drive. I think that is a very parallel based approach that existed in the past, but no longer is going to exist today. When you think about AI, just even the discovery of molecules, which used to take a long time and it happens sequentially, can now happen in parallel. And the opportunity to discover more molecules that have a potential benefit to patients at a much faster rate is happening as early as at the bench. And there's no doubt that's already happening. We've seen it with vaccines. We've already seen it in many areas. Rare disease as well. There's so many rare diseases that don't have a medicine yet. But there's so many more rare diseases that have not even been detected that we don't even know of. And so I think AI is going to help us to uncover that veil and be able to go faster at a much faster rate in terms of the discovery of these molecules. Now, when you think about the drug development itself, everybody is going to be involved in very early phases, from the patients to the value, health, and evidence teams, to medical affairs, to clinical and commercial, working hand in hand much earlier so that we can have a much shorter timeline. How do you make that timeline for drug development shorter? By thinking about the end goal and working backwards and actually understanding what are the things that the regulators need, the things that the patients need, the things that commercial needs, the things that medical needs. Developing a registry much earlier is so critical so that the moment we are approved, we're ready to roll and we're ready to collect data. And we also are working much earlier with our external stakeholders, whether it is going to be the regulatory team, whether it's all the access, the healthcare, governments, the bodies, so that the moment the medicine's approved, you have access. So that on day one, a patient can receive that medicine, because often even in specialty care or rare disease, you don't have time to wait after an approval to get access. The patient may die in between those few weeks or months. So it has become of utmost importance to start much earlier. And then the communication, you talked about a use case. It used to take us about a year to publish something in, let's say, the New England Journal of Medicine. Why? Because we went through so many drafts. We create an outline, a draft, get all of our thought leaders to write it up, review it, finally get it to the journal and publish it. Now with generative AI, you can actually get a very good draft within minutes, if not seconds. And then you can have the experts review it and make sure that it's accurate, reflective of what they experienced, reflective of the discussion and the conclusions that they wanted to make. And that can streamline the process by over 90% of the time. And you could be saving so much money that is usually spent on developing one publication. And I'm going to add to that, you can actually have this communicated to your peers, your thought leaders, the physicians in a very short period of time. Literally after Congress, you should already be communicating out to external stakeholders. These are real use cases that are being applied across industry on just simply the communication aspect. There's so many more, but I'm picking an example that in the olden days took us sometimes a year or a year and a half to get an article out on the trial that we concluded so long ago. It doesn't have to be that long, and it no longer will be that long.
Wonderful. Wow, what a great way to move to my next questions. As a medical leaders, I already can see that you're catching up with the trend, advancement and everything. But as a leader in such a large firm, what are the trends or advancement you anticipate at the intersection of digitization, data, AI, and medical affairs, and how these developments are shaping up in the pharma industry? What's your outlook on that?
I think that there's a lot of excitement in digitization on how we operate and what we bring to our external stakeholders. But at the end of the day, we work in an enterprise. We all work in different enterprises, and it's so important to do it in a way that is respectful of the data that we're collecting of patients, so that we're not risking any patient information to the external world. And I think that is the area where, while we are moving at a very fast pace externally, we also need to do things in an approach that has boundaries and regulations created. And I think every pharma company is working independently on creating these, also collectively, so that we can protect patients and protect all the data that we're generating, the intellectual property that we have of our own clinical trials. All of this needs to be held with integrity. And therefore, we have to be very careful of the other side of AI that perhaps we don't want to delve into, and ensure that everything that we do is going to allow us to do things faster, more efficiently, more innovatively, with the baseline that we're protecting all of the information that we're collecting for the sake of our patients and all the different sort of goals that we have to develop this. We're also starting to collect a lot of insights. Insights are coming in through multiple channels now, and we have to be very careful when we collect these insights on the type of conclusions we make. We can't be hasty about it. We have to be thoughtful and understand that even though the data is coming to us in volumes, what does it mean? Does it truly mean directionally what we think it means, or what perhaps AI is concluding it to be? We need to use our human intelligence to make sure that it correlates with what we believe is potentially the outcome of these insights. And only then can we drive our strategies in the right direction. At the end of the day, these are patients who have life-taking diseases, and we don't want to be making the wrong decisions by having AI drive too fast and in a way that could cause harm to patients. So while everything is happening very rapidly, we all, I think, have to pause and understand what it is that we want AI to do versus what human intelligence should be doing. And there is a place where they can both intersect in a very beautiful way to bring medicines faster to patients.
Wow, so true. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating and giving patient-centric perspective and how these technologies, digital strategies, and Gen AI and data, everything basically are impactful for helping those patients in need. We really liked it, and I'm sure that we want to learn more from you. Thank you so much for participating, and let's continue the conversation in the future. So, Dr. Sonal, thank you so much again, and appreciate your time and perspective here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. It's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for this opportunity.